Let me bring in Dennis Van Roekel, who is president of the National Education Association. It is the nation's largest union, 3.2 million members. It's good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
You know, in the lead up to Wisconsin, we heard so much from union leaders about enthusiasm. What do you think happened last night? Why couldn't you pull it off?
Well, I think there are three things that are very important that happened in Wisconsin last night. Number one, there is now a balance of power. John Lehman winning the Senate seat in District 21 is really important because now there'll be a balance of power and the governor won't be able to just ram through things. Number two, I think I pointed out the danger of the Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. It shows that unlimited corporate funds can really make a difference in the corporate or in the electoral process, especially when 75% came from out of state.
Let me stop you there because I think this is an important point, and I'll let you get your third point in, but I want to play for you what the head of the Republican Governors Association said about these charges that essentially this election was bought by outside money.
Mika, that's laughable. I never heard that argument back in 2008 when President Obama had twice as much money as the Republicans, that it was money. But yes, money is part of being able to launch a successful campaign, and people across Wisconsin and across the country invested because they thought his ideas were right.
How would you respond to that?
Two things. Number one, those who think the labor union somehow suffered this large defeat, I think they forgot already what happened in Ohio when the same sort of policies were turned down 2-1 by a vote of the people. But this election was about money versus ground game. There were 50,000 volunteers, 1.4 million doors knocked on to talk to individual people, 1.5 million phone calls. Yes, money does make a difference, but we're going to have to figure out a way where the average citizen can combat that incredible amount of money from just a few wealthy individuals.
So let me allow you now to make your third point, which is why do you think it wasn't so bad for the Democrats last night?
Well, my third point again is what happened in Ohio. Recall elections are very difficult. They happen very seldom. But when it comes to the policies of these governors where they want to shut down the voice of the middle class, they want to silence the voice and say you don't have a way of contributing to the debate in the state, I think that question is still very open. And I think as we move toward the November election of 2012, the average everyday citizen is going to speak up.
We should make the point that there are differences, obviously, between Wisconsin, which was a recall, and Ohio, which was a ballot initiative. But I also thought, Dennis, there were some interesting numbers that it did seem to me that when you look at these exit polls, more than half approved of the changes to collective bargaining. And so I'm wondering if you think if unions are fighting an image at a time when so much is being cut that one of the biggest costs to states is pensions and benefits.
Well, in Wisconsin specifically, the union said they're willing to pay their fair share. They agreed to increase in cost of health care. They agreed to increase cost of their pension that they would bear, but that wasn't the issue. What Governor Walker wanted to do was just silence the voice of the middle-class workers. Okay. And I think both union members and non-union members understand that the voice of the average worker has to be heard. If we leave it to the 1%, that voice will be silenced forever.
Major Garrett has a question he'd like to pose to you. Major?
Well, sure. Contrasting Ohio and Wisconsin, one thing that strikes me is that Governor Walker's approach in Wisconsin was more partisan than Governor Kasich's was in Ohio. What Ohio Republicans told me is what Governor Kasich did was he hit all the public employee unions, including the firefighters and the policemen, traditionally Republican-backing organizations within the labor movement. And that's what coalesced to create the defeat for Governor Kasich's reforms, or what he called reforms in Ohio. And what Governor Walker did was much more partisan, much more one-sided. And that victory Republicans look at now is something that may intensify a partisan approach to these pension issues. And I wonder if our guest wonders and worries about that too.
Well, it was very obviously a divide and conquer strategy by Governor Walker, and I think the labor movement as a whole and non-labor families have to come together and understand that the voice of the middle class was never given, and benefits were never given by benevolent CEOs. It was by everyday workers banding together to say we need a voice too. The 99%, Main Street is just as important as Wall Street. And as we move toward the 2012 election in November, I believe more and more people will realize if we don't have that voice, that 1% will control our entire life.
Do you think that, and maybe we should just look at Wisconsin, because obviously this is where so much heart and effort went into this, Dennis, but do you think that this race has psychological implications in November? I mean, and also you have to look at what happened in San Jose and San Diego, where voters approved measures to cut retirement benefits. What about that psychological effect, winner, loser?
Well, obviously, we live in a winner-loser society. People play that up all the time. But really what it comes down to is two very different visions for America. FDR would say whether we want to add more to the abundance of those who have much or provide enough for those who have too little. I think that's the question in 2012 for America. We've got to look at economic justice, social justice. We've got to lift up all Americans. It can't be just the wealthiest few that benefit from the electoral process or policy at the federal, state, or local level. It's a very clear choice in 2012, and we will do our best to make sure there is a clear distinction of those two visions and support the one that we believe is important: public education, the opportunity for all.
Dennis Van Roekel, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, Alex.